Well, the second half of the Nashville Predators season is about to get underway. Who are the players to watch? What games are you concerned about? Who's been the Preds MVP so far this season? We will take a look at where the Predators are at the All-Star break, or I guess after the All-Star break. And speaking of the All-Star break, what did you think of the Vegas games? Kind of a mixed bag. We'll dive into the highs and lows, plus how Roman Josi and Juuse Saros did. That's all coming up today on Locked On Predators.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime who's feeling good about the second half of the year for the Preds.
I am. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at ontheforecheck.com.
Yeah, lots of juicy stuff we're going to dive in today. But before we do that, want to mention today's show has a sponsor. It's brought to you by our friends today at Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. And we're coming back from the All-Star weekend in Las Vegas.
We wish we were actually coming back from the All-Star break in Vegas.
To make it clear, we didn't go.
No.
Keep making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. And maybe we'll rack up enough money and importance to be on that fight with the players.
That'd be great.
Yeah. What did you think of overall this weekend, Ann?
It was a mixed bag for me. I thought the skills competition I thought was fun. I thought what they added, the fountain face off, and then they had the blackjack. I thought that was really fun and kind of a unique spin on it with a Vegas theme. Always loved the breakaway competition and the fastest skater competition. So I thought the skills was a little bit more interesting this year. The game is always a little wah, wah, wah for me, It's like the goalies are playing well because they don't want to be embarrassed. Some of the shooters are trying. Some of them just are purely decorative. And the defenders are like, yeah, go ahead. Oh, just go ahead. Just go ahead.
Be damned.
Yes. So, it's a mixed bag for me. Some of it was fun to watch. I didn't think that the All-Star game was particularly exciting to watch, but that's just me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the weekend?
I feel like that's how it is in most sports, though, isn't it? Where it's like everybody loves the home run derby, kind of not super interested in the All-Star game for baseball.
Yes.
Everybody loves the dunk contest, but, the NBA All-Star game is what it is. Really the only, I'd say, league that really has, like, the game itself is super fun to watch is Major League Soccer. And that's because they always put all the All-Stars from the MLS on the same team. And they always face off against like a team from like Portugal or England or kind of like a bigger club around the league. I don't really think you can do that in the NHL because they would murder whatever Swedish elite league team came here.
That's true.
But no, I'm with you. I think the skills competition itself was a little hit or miss.
Really?
First off, who decided that the marquee event was the accuracy shooting? Like, when did it become like the headline, like the last thing of the night?
Yeah. No, I would agree with that.
Yeah, because if anything, the most fun thing of the night, the thing you would want to like build up to would be the breakaway competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, isn't that like the super fun thing that got everybody engaged? Now, John Hamm, what the hell were you doing, man? That left a sour note, I would say.
Yeah.
Alex Pietrangelo with shouting from Carrot Top gets the win, who didn't even score. Like, none of his shots went in.
Yeah.
That was the MVP of the night. Like, that's who wins the breakaway. I think that left a little bit of a sour taste. And yeah, it's the home crowd and you want to give them home happy, but it's like,
Come on.
reward creativity and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I thought that the fountain face-off that Roman Josi participated in, I thought that was actually really fun. And they had Jocelyn Lamoureux Davidson, who competed and kind of schooled a number of NHLers,
Oh,
if we're
not
being
kind of.
honest.
She
Yeah.
put a lot of people to task.
She full on showed up and yes. Now, I always do feel bad for the first person who has to go because you kind of got to figure it out. And this was a new thing, and they had to like tap the pucks to activate the lights on the puck and all that. And I think that kind of was a hitch in the giddy up of Roman Josi taking the title for that. But I thought that was kind of fun and interesting and unique and different. But yeah, there was a lot of it that just sort of um, wasn't gonna make any highlight reels.
Yeah. The presentation for the outdoor stuff was super fun. Like the names and logos on the
Yes.
Bellagio. That was
Yes.
like the coolest thing of the night. I wish we would have seen more of like the 21 and 22, the whole blackjack thing. Uh,
Mhm.
Judging from what some like agents and writers tweeted about, because obviously they filmed that in the face off or the fountain face off the night before. Uh,
Mhm.
they said there was a lot of like footage that didn't make it into the broadcast. Uh,
Yeah.
but it was like super fun because it was like players like winding up with terrible hands and like they did like a 2 and a 5 trying to go for like an ace and a jack. So
Yes.
there was like a lot of stuff apparently that didn't make it into the cut. And I would have loved to see kind of more of that, like a little bit more personality, just because it seemed like that was a little bit short. Like that was like one of the
Yes.
events they were kind of teasing to all night, that they were promoting, and it seemed like that just kind of fell like 8 minutes, and then that was it.
Which is
So
so surprising because when you think of the NHL, all you think about is just personality.
yeah, but I mean, it was on display. Like, hey,
Yeah.
that's why everybody loved the breakaway. Like,
Yes.
seeing Alex DeBrincat come out and the whole hangover get up and
Yes.
um, got the blindfold shot. Oof.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So there are and I think that's part of what makes it so fun is seeing kind of more the individualism and the personality of the players in the events, and sometimes I feel like they miss highlighting that. Like, they just sort of miss that opportunity for fans to see players kind of be themselves a little bit more because we don't get a lot of that necessarily in the NHL compared to other sports. Now, I will say also a highlight for me was Nash's tweet. So Nash tweeted out, walking down the strip in Vegas, and one of the guys says, "Have you ever seen so many bachelor parties?" Me, yes. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I thought,
No,
nailed it, Nash.
I think we can relate. I
Yes.
think we can relate. Yeah, and then the game itself, Preds did fine. Roman
Hmm.
Josi, a goal and 2 assists. And then UC Saros, not, obviously goalies in All-Star game or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, his second game was fine. It was kind of like one of those things where it's like, oh, is UC Saros going to single-handedly will the Central to an All-Star victory like he's done with the Preds all
Yes.
long, kind of on brand? Uh,
Yes.
Pulling the goalie with 2 minutes left in an All-Star game, kind of a bold choice.
I mean, I guess if you're gonna go for it, you go for it. But yeah, at the All-Star game, it seems, yeah, I would agree. That's an interesting choice.
Yeah. I'm not sure, going back to something we talked about earlier, how do you make the game, I guess, more entertaining? Because I mean, 3-on-3 is certainly a deviation from what they've done in the past, and
Mhm.
um, yeah, but I mean, otherwise, it's any other way you kind of do it, it's just a hockey game.
Right. And I like the 3-on-3. I do like the 3-on-3. I think for me, it's just it almost seems like when you're watching the game, you have players there that don't really want to be there. And I can't
There.
I can't fault them for not playing all out. You're not going to get hockey, NHL game quality at the All-Star game. I mean, this is supposed to be their break. They're supposed to be, catching their breath and resting. They're not going to go busting out in an All-Star game and risk injury and all that kind of stuff. But there's just got to be a way for the game to have just maybe a little bit more energy, especially from the defenders. Oh, sweet baby Jesus. They were like little traffic cones.
Yeah. It's like Ben Harper made every All-Star.
Oh my gosh, Nick.
I'll
yeah.
be a letter for that. Speaking of Ben Harper and the Predators, big second half coming up this year. They have a playoff spot right now, a pretty good playoff spot. Can they hold it? That's going to be the $1 million question we talk about. First, though, let's talk about our friends at Built Bar, shall we? This is the time of year where pretty much everybody gives up on their New Year's resolutions, not because they will give it up on themselves, just because, it's hard to eat healthy and get tasty food in the process. That's not true with Built. Built is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And if you're not a big fan of protein bars, try the Puffs, the Built Puffs. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They have a cinnamon churro puff, a coconut marshmallow puff, banana cream pie, so many to choose from. And if that's not your jam, there's still the classic flavors like mint brownie, coconut almond, and a brand new white chocolate cookies and cream. All Built bars are low in calories, low in sugar, low in net carbs, but high in protein. You'll be blown away by just how healthy these are. If you don't believe it, try it for yourself. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Yeah, and it kind of seems like forever since we've talked about a Nashville Predators game. Finally,
Yes.
we get some this week. Hockey back Wednesday.
I know. I cannot wait. It feels like dog years, this All-Star break. And I'm glad for the players. We've seen on social media, they're out having a great time, relaxing, resting up, all that great stuff. So happy for them, bored as can be here back in Nashville, waiting for the games. But we do need to talk about sort of what happened in this first half of the season and where we're going forward, Nick. So let's start with this very basic question. How surprised are you at where the Predators are right now at the All-Star break?
So on a scale from 1 to 10,
Mm-hmm.
1 being, yeah, called it, 10 being, holy crap. I would say a solid 5 or a 6.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believed before this year started that it was going to be 50-50.
Yeah.
We knew the Preds had the talent. We knew they were solid on paper. It was just for whatever reason, they couldn't put all of that together. So I guess like the surprise isn't that like they're doing well. I think it's just the surprise is that they've managed to get it all together when it just kind of looked like too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. All this talent, not really sure what you do with it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And I think, I hate to be, the person that lands at the 5, but I think that's where I was going into the season. I will say that changed for me when I was at training camp. Training camp just had a great energy. It had a great vibe, much better energy. There was just kind of a fresh feeling about the team. And I will tell you that I thought Matt Duchene had just a phenomenal training camp, and several other guys did too. But watching that training camp, Matt Duchene was a man possessed in that camp, and you could tell there's something very different happening here. And so, being a Hawktimist, I'm always like, no, this is the year. This is the year. But I think after training camp, I thought, okay, no, wait a minute. We could really, if they can get those pieces together, which, like you said, I think we've had a couple seasons where we thought, no, we've got the pieces, but we couldn't get them together. I'm not super surprised that they're doing as well as they are.
Yeah, you talked about kind of the new energy they had coming in.
Mhm.
And you kind of see that throughout the year in some of the games they're playing too. Speaking of surprises, Anne, is there one thing, player, aspect of the game that
Mhm.
kind of surprises you more than anything else?
I would say for me, the one specific thing that has surprised me the most is the buy-in from everybody.
Mhm.
And not because that's a foreign concept, that's the way it's supposed to be, but I think that that has been such a hard sell for the Nashville Predators for several seasons in a row. I think even pre-John Hines, I think you saw at the end of Peter Laviolette's tenure, you saw a struggle for a buy-in from these players, and Lavi just wasn't going to be able to pull it out of them anymore. And I think that was part of what brought Hines in, and it's taken some time for John Hines. He definitely didn't have an easy start to the season here, or to his career here with COVID and shortened seasons and all of that. But I think when you can see such a difference in this team because they're all buying in and they're all playing the same way. And I think the past few seasons, we've seen some players wanting to play a different style of hockey. We've seen some players being kind of frustrated with ice time, and it feels like everybody is on the same page. So for me, it's that they finally got that together. I think for me, that's been the biggest surprise.
Yeah, and you could kind of maybe tell that players weren't completely bought in with Hines. Obviously, we're not in
Mm-hmm.
the locker room. We don't know the conversations that are being had or anything like that. But you can just kind of tell, sort of between Laviolette and John Hines, kind of in the weird transitional period, whatever you want to call it. There seemed to be something off. Like there seemed to be a
Yes.
disconnect between, and I'll include the front office in this too. Kind of seemed like a disconnect between who Poyle brought in, the way the Preds have kind of been conditioned to play over the years, and the direction John Hines wanted to take them.
Yes.
So it does seem like there's a more unified front this year in terms of what the Preds want to do. And it seems like there's kind of a more unified front this year, which is good. That's definitely something that's noticeable. The on ice thing for me, Anne, is just
Mm-hmm.
special teams.
Oh my gosh.
Like
Who
how
would have thought it?
well how well we say who how what did we say, Anne? Please
What did
please
we?
please continue that sentence of what I was trying to say.
Well, I mean, who would have thought that special
That's
teams
what
would,
I was going for.
who would have thought? Yep.
What a hard sentence to say.
It's Monday.
It is Monday.
Grace and abundance on Mondays. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, who would have thought? And the reason we say that is because the Preds have been really bad on special teams the past 3 years, record levels of bad, I should say, over a 3-year stretch. But and the fact that it's not just that they're getting more luck or they're scoring more goals, it's that they're playing completely different. And
Yes.
that's I don't know if that's like a Lambert thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a John Hines thing, tweaking things up, but whatever it is, you can tell there's a lot more movement. There's a lot more energy. They're looking to prioritize getting pucks into more dangerous areas than they are just, hey, let's pass it 5 times. And then there's Philip Forsberg or Victor Arvidsson for a one-timer. I bet you
Yes.
didn't see that coming.
Yeah,
There's
they have gotten a lot more interesting on the power play for sure.
They still need a second unit. Still need a second unit.
Yeah, they do. There's some tweaking that needs to be done to that second unit for sure. But I don't know, maybe the Preds will pick someone up before the trade deadline. Just saying.
Yeah.
Leaving it out there.
If you want a hint on who we pick, we have had multiple podcasts on this already. We also have an article coming up on theforecheck.com where Ann and I weigh in on who we think the Preds should bring in.
Mm-hmm. And we are so right. I'll be so
right.
disappointed. I'll be so disappointed. All right, but let's talk about who is actually here now, Nick. Who is the team MVP so far this season for you?
Well, I think you can go with like 3 or 4 different guys, and that just tells you how wired in the Predators are this season.
Yes.
We've gone back and forth on this multiple times. I think overall, I think you got to give the edge to Juuse Saros.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And interesting because when Roman Josi was out, We had this exact conversation
Yes, we're
before.
like, he's
Oh,
so
yeah.
the
It's
MVP.
like Roman Josi is clearly the most valuable player on the Preds. But no, I think UC Saros, especially these past few weeks, have kind of stolen some wins.
Yes.
Get the Preds some extra 2 points on the score sheet, extra points on the win column. And I think that's gets the Predators closer to where they need to be, where you're talking about those games where you're not 100% in it,
Mm-hmm.
where,
Yes.
where you're kind of out of it, and then all of a sudden, hey, you've somehow scraped up a 3-2 win. That's the result of a good goaltender, and that's somebody who can kind of will you into a better playoff position down the road. So in that end, I would say Saros, but which way are you leaning?
I went totally rogue on this one, and I'm going off ice MVP, and this won't surprise you compared to my earlier comments, but I'm 100% team John Hines. I think John Hines is the key to the Predators' success. I think he's the key to getting these players playing as well as they are. I think he's the key for getting everybody pulling in the same direction.
Okay,
I think he's the real MVP.
but that's cheating. Most valuable
It's
player. Most valuable player. That's what the P
he
stands for.
he is a player. He is a key component, which is the same as player. But I really do
No, it's
think
not.
it's completely
Coaches. When was the last time you saw a coach win the Hart Trophy?
our podcast, our rules. Like we totally can make this up as we go, right?
Well, 50% of this podcast is mine.
Okay,
And
well,
I'm going with it.
I'm gonna veto. We should each get a podcast veto. So I'm gonna veto your player complaint. And you feel free to veto me when you need to, but not on this because I'm so right. John Hines walked into a dumpster fire, friends, a dumpster fire. And he had a garden hose to put it out with. And somehow he's been able to do it. And I know that there are still people in Nashville who are on hashtag Fire Hines train, and they just need to ride that train right on out of town because John Hines is the reason why you are seeing success with these players who could be MVPs. That's my take on it.
So we agree. John Hines is Nashville's coach of the year.
Correct. Very valuable key component, MVKC.
Yes, so he would be the
stretch.
Nashville Jack Adams winner. He's not eligible for the Preds MVP award.
Well, probably no, but anyway, our podcast, our rules. Coming up, though, we've looked back. We're going to go ahead and we're going to look ahead. Coming up, we're going to talk about kind of what our biggest concerns are moving forward. And we also are going to talk about what is sort of high noon for the Nashville Predators. What is the stretch that's going to be key coming down to the wire in the playoffs? But first, want to remind you that this show is brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game coming up. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute information on pro and college hoops. Of course, they have NHL. They have boxing and UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, so we've taken a look back. We have argued over who the Predators' most valuable player was. I was the only one to actually turn in a submission for that.
I went rogue and got creative, and I feel like I should get some points for that. But go ahead.
Well, you can get brownie points for that.
I would rather just have brownies.
Yeah. So now let's look forward. We kind of talked about predictions for trade deadline stuff, how we think the Predators are going to finish out the second half of the year, and what's kind of your key for the Predators to keep this success up.
Okay, now you're going to come after me because it's going to look like I'm backtracking on my MVP pick. But my biggest key is the health of UC Saros.
Who is the Preds' most valuable player as voted by this podcast?
Okay. Um, we're just gonna have to agree to disagree. I really do think though UC Saros is going to be the key. And one of the things that we have to watch for is things like, game fatigue or heaven forbid, knock on wood, injury, because I'm not real sure that the Nashville Predators have a backup in Riddick that could carry the team quite like UC Saros could, especially down the stretch where points are really going to be important and going to matter. So for me, that's a key is how goes UC Saros, so goes the team. Fortunately, he's coached by the most valuable key component, John Hines. What do you think, Nick?
The most valuable coach on the team, yes. Uh, yeah, I think health is certainly going to be a big thing, and
Right.
it's just consistency, isn't it? And the reason
Mhm.
that seems like super basic to say, but when you think back on the past couple of years, around this time 2 years ago is where Forsberg kind of disappeared. We also
Yeah.
talked about people like Duchesne kind of going cold for stretches, Johansson. So, they've proven they can put up big numbers and have
Mhm.
incredible years and kind of go on this incredible run. Can they do that for a full 82 game season? Because there's a lot of evidence that says, you know what? They kind of disappear for stretches.
Yeah.
They can't have any of those down the stretch because the West, and especially the Central, is just so
Yes.
tight right now.
Yeah, and that's a little bit nerve-wracking because all it would take is for 1 or 2 of those guys to kind of go cold, and you're looking at a very different Central Division. So I would agree with that. Um, and let's hope we can stay with it. I think it's very encouraging what we've seen so far this season. We really haven't seen that hot, cold Philip Forsberg. We've seen, him out briefly for injury, but when he came back in, came right back in with, I think he came in with a 4-goal game was his game back, or shortly
So,
after that,
yeah.
the second game back. Yeah. So if we can keep those guys playing, I think you're right. I think as long as we keep them chugging in the right direction, we can feel pretty good about it. Now, the question is, what's the most important stretch they have coming up, Nick?
Well, there's a couple of interesting ones. So,
Mm-hmm.
first off, Wednesday's game against the Stars, that's
Ugh.
gonna be interesting because that's 8 days off.
Yes.
And so that's sort of a concern, maybe a little bit. But, we talked about the Predators maybe not coming back strong from sort of weird times off. We
Mm-hmm.
notoriously have talked about the canceled Ottawa game leading into the Montreal fiasco.
Right.
And
Yes.
so February, of course, this is 8 days before Dallas. Then you have another 3 days before you play Winnipeg, and then another 3 days after that. So it's kind of a more spaced out schedule than what the Preds are used to. But, you look at March, there's a period where they play 8 games in 12 days that include a
Oof.
couple of different flights back and forth and then a West Coast road trip against the Kings, the Ducks, and the Golden Knights, who are all top 3 in the Pacific right now. And then the last month of the season, Ann.
Oh, it's brutal.
Minnesota twice,
Yep.
Calgary twice, who you've struggled with this year, Edmonton, who you struggled with this year, Colorado is your second to last game of the year, Florida and St. Louis are mixed in there. You also have Tampa Bay, who's one of the best teams
Tampa Bay.
in the NHL of
Yep.
our generation. Yeah, and then Pittsburgh's in there also. So it's really going to be a measure of where the Preds are as a team. I will say, I guess last year they kind of faced the same thing. Remember, they had Tampa, Carolina, and Florida all within like the last 3 weeks, and we're like, oh, this is
Right.
a murder stretch, and everybody was like, yep, there's where Dallas is going to pass them, and they actually
Mhm.
thrived.
Yes.
They did very, very well in that stretch, beat Carolina twice in the last 2 games, so they can do it.
Yeah,
They
and I
can do
think
it.
this year they're a mentally tough team, and so I feel like, I look at that April calendar and you think, "Oh Lord," but I feel like this is a mentally tough team who can really dig in, and I think we've seen that. They started out 1-4, and I think we've seen them sort of be able to pull out of that. They had another stretch where they were dropping 4 games in a row, but this is a mentally tough team, so it'll be very interesting to see how they do in that final gasp of a stretch. But for me, high noon is going to be in March. It's going to be the 14th and 15th, I think, where they are, or no, 12th and 13th,
It's 12th and
back
15th against St.
back to
Minnesota.
St. Louis and Minnesota back-to-back games. For me, this is high noon. We're, drawing guns a-blazing, take 10 paces. Who's going to come out of this? For me, this is kind of the two games that are going to really matter. They're going to be coming off of some games, Dallas and Anaheim, and then they're going to be headed to Pittsburgh afterward. But I think these two games with points in the Central Division are going to be the key stretch for the Predators.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. And that was what I talked about. That kicked off the 8 games in 12 days.
Yes.
And there's a lot of travel on that stretch, too. They have St. Louis at home and then fly to Minnesota the next day. They come back home, then fly to Philly, back home again, and then that West Coast road trip. So it's going to be a lot of wonky travel.
Yes.
And we sort of talked about it in the past. The Predators, when they kind of have that weird schedule, based on the records this season, haven't done quite as well. That's kind of been where their cold stretches come from. So, yep, definitely going to have to take a look at that and see if the Preds can sustain it.
Yep, for sure. So what's one game that you saw this season, Nick, that you really felt like was kind of a turning point for the team? Or a game of the year?
That they've already played?
That they've already played.
I think a big one to me was 2 games before the season got put on pause. Colorado at home. Really, that was the game where everybody was out. Matt Duchene was injured. You also had like Granlund in protocol and Johansson and just a lot of people in the lineup out. That was the Colton Sissons and Tanner Jeannot playing 25 minutes a night game.
Yes.
And they played against Colorado, who, to be fair, we're also missing some people. But that felt like the game to me. It was just like, doesn't matter what happens. We have enough people on this team that, if we get hit in the face, we're going to keep going. And we have enough talent everywhere to step up and steal a win.
Yes. No, I would agree with that one. And, like you said, Colorado did have a lot of people out, but I think that game highlights the depth of this team, where if somebody does go down, and not that we want that to happen with some of these guys who are having, points per game seasons here, but there's depth to this team that can kind of rally back. For me, a big game was the Minnesota game beginning of the season. The Preds were 1-4, went into this game, and it was the first game where I feel like you saw things click. The Predators have improved since then. They've played more physical since then. They've definitely cleaned up some things since then. But you saw all the lines scoring offensively. You saw some good defense. You saw the mental toughness of this team. You saw everybody pulling in the right direction. So for me, that was just kind of like a glimpse of like, this is the potential. And we're seeing even more payoff from that. So, I think the Predators are headed in the right direction at the All-Star break. And, it's always brutal down to the finish, but I feel like they're in a good place.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see. They start off Wednesday back from All-Star break against the Dallas Stars. So we'll have a preview of that one. Also, more hockey content coming up this week, both from the Olympics, a little look at the NHL, lots of fun stuff coming up on tap. So be sure to stay tuned to Locked On Predators all week. And where can the fine people find you online?
You can find my work at ontheforecheck.com, and you can find me on Twitter at AnnK_Mama on Ice.
I'm Nick Morgan. You can find me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. Check out my work at ontheforecheck.com. Also, be sure to follow the podcast at LO_Predators. Let us know if there's ever a topic you want us to discuss, or if you want to weigh in on something we've talked about on the podcast. That is going to do it for us today on Locked On Predators. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Back here tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a good day, everybody.